Hello. Thank you for joining me for this video. This is the second video I've done on the corruption of the Western Heights School District. In the first one, we talked about the relationships of the board members to one another. Now I'd like to discuss with you the misuse of bond funds within the school district. So first, let's just talk about this. All pertains to what will be referenced as the 2018 B series bonds, but it was voted on in October of 2017. We believe that the board wrongfully expended the bond funds, and in doing so violated multiple state statutes as well as the Oklahoma Constitution. We'll talk more about that as we go through here. First of all, what brought about our interest in this was the 2018-2019 audit. In that audit, they found that there was a violation in the expenditures of 1.5 million and 6.2 million of bond money to pay lease purchase agreements for the district on previous bonds. These were in 2019 or in 2009. There was a bond measure which led us into the lease purchase and finance. And for those who don't understand what a lease purchase financing is, it's voters vote on a bond. The bond is then issued, and it's saying that we will collect taxes as a revenue to pay for upcoming uh, expenses. Like, let's say we want to do a new gymnasium, then they'll put a bond measure out for the new gymnasium. Well, taxes are collected on a yearly basis. The chances of having the $7-8 million up front to build the gymnasium is usually not available. So what they do is they go to a county trust or a trust of some sort, or even to a bank. A bank can be a trust. Just about anything. Anybody can basically set up a trust as long as they got the funds to finance. So you do a lease purchase finance. And what that means is you loan the money to the school district or to the municipality, saying that we loan the money, but if you default, we get whatever you're building with it. But if you don't, at the end of the terms of this lease purchase agreement, you get whatever properties that were involved. You retain ownership. In this case, the gymnasium, you build it off the money we lent you. If you default, we get the gymnasium. If you pay it off, you get full ownership of the gymnasium. Now, so what happens is the bond measure comes up, they vote on it, or the voters vote in an election, they decide whether they get a bond measure. Now, the bond is more of an income to pay off the lease purchase agreement. So then after a bond measure is approved, you go to a trust, and the trust says, okay, we will lend you X millions of dollars or X thousands of dollars or whatever may be the case, and you agree to use the money that's coming in from the bond measure to pay off our principal and interest that we've lent you. And so that's what lease purchase financing is. So lease purchase financing is a loan, bond issuance are the collateral for that said bond. So get back into where we were. During the 2019, or in 2019, an audit was conducted, and it found that in 2018 we had paid lease purchase financing agreements with the new bond, the 2018 bond. And as you can see from this screen, it talks about why it was a violation. Well, I'll go into more of that here in just a minute. Now, I put this up here about the Oklahoma Constitution, Title 1026A. Some people say it's not a violation, other people say it is a violation. I've talked to several attorneys and gotten three different opinions. Two of them agree that it's a violation, one of them says it's not. But that's a little side note. The statute 62-430.1 subsection E says the payments for lease and rental of real or personal property shall be made only from annual and supplemental appropriations specifically designated for such purposes, and no appropriation for the purposes of paying real rentals on real or personal property shall be transferred or diverted to any other purposes except as may be authorized by the terms of agreement or by law. So that's where the violation come that they listed in the audit for the 62-430.1, because what they did was they diverted funds that taxpayers were told and the community voters were told that basically this money was going to go towards the new STEAM Center, the new Welcome Center, the new Wire Center. It was going to go to fight the mold issue at Winds West. It was going to go to fight the deplorable conditions in a couple of the schools throughout the district that were getting out of hand. That's not what happened. They expended $7,732,850 of the $41,760,000 of the 2008 bond on the 2009 and the 2009 and 2013 lease purchase agreements. Now the percentage of this exceeded 18.5%. Now, state statute states that 62 in state statute 62-574 states very clearly that in subsection C, it says, if any such bond issue is approved at an election, the particular government entity shall expend all of the proceeds of such bond issue for the purpose set out in the proposition voted upon and shall expend not less than 85% of the monies allotted to each specific project, unless such projects can be completed for a smaller amount of money on that project as published according to section 4B of this act and for which the bond issue was approved. When the board expended this money, this wasn't like the projects had started. This money was taken from the top. At the same time, the bond issuance for the STEAM Center was issued. They issued with it the 2018 B bond series. That series of bonds, all but the issuance cost and the interest, went towards past debt that should have already had an income coming in. And the 2009 bond measure and the 2013 bond measure should have been paying for the 2009 lease purchase agreement, and it should have been paying on the 2013 lease purchase agreement, respectively. But that wasn't the situation. The lease purchase payments for these were made, and these were just payments. These weren't purchases. These weren't final payments to where we get title and ownership to it. These were just standard payments. Were made made with the 2018 B series bonds. That is a clear violation. That is diverting funds from its original purpose beyond the 15% that is allowed to another project. Right here is the bond proposal. I don't want nobody to say that we went out and we just making stuff up on the board. We clearly have the documentation here from Stephen H. McDonald and Associates, where he talks about it and then talk the cover letter, and then it goes into the actual purposes of the bond. Now, when you go through the bond purposes, which you have to go down to section 4. On section 4, it clearly states what the law, it gives the spirit of the law that I was just telling you about. That the specific projects for which at least 85% of the proceeds of the aforesaid bonds shall be expended, and the dollar amount for each project shall be as followed. And you can go through it. It gives you a breakdown somewhat, like yeah, 5.63 million for the newcomer center. It gives improvements to Winds West Elementary, which would address the mold issue that's making a lot of kids sick at Winds West. A lot of teachers are as well sick at Winds West, especially the pre-K, kindergarten people that are in that wing that has had the mold issue for quite a while. But it was supposed to go towards that. The STEAM Center is, let's see here. The new wire building, uh, the STEAM Center, the $23 million to STEAM Center. Sorry about that. I had to look at something. So, anyways, it comes up to 41,760. Well, in the law, it says that they can that they only have to put up 70%, but they got to expend 85%. So don't get that confused. They only had to disclose to the public the 85 or the 70% of what they were going to do with the funds, but they had to expend 85% on of the funds to that. But what they actually did is they did 100% of the funds. So that's not to say that they didn't have some leeway there with the 15% to do something with. But the 3.5 still up in the air, and when you total in everything, the reissuance fee and cost and interest and all of that, we wind up paying a lot more than what we would have if they would have just continued on with the note payments as was set forth. This is the pamphlet, if you're familiar, back in 2017 that they gave out at the board meetings. They gave out in the community. One of the things that I'd like to point out here is that, while they say that the approval of this bond will not result in an increase in your current property tax, while that is true, you would have got lower taxes had you voted no. And I'm not saying that this couldn't be a good deal for Western Heights. It just seems like what they're attempting to do with this was to pay a past debt, not necessarily build these buildings. It seems that they were more focused since right from the get-go, from the moment that the bond money was approved. Once the bonds were approved, immediately what's one of the first things they do is they pay off, well, not pay off, they pay on past debts to the tune of close to $8 million. Now, when the board was presented the findings by Courtney Odom, the CPA with, oh Lord have mercy, I'm trying to remember, Patton, which is this the accounting, John Patton's accounting. When they were presented this, the board's response to it was that the bond payments were made on the advice from Stephen McDonald's office. Now, Stephen McDonald is the one that did the proposal. So the board immediately wants to shift blame, especially Mannix Barnes, as always, to Stephen McDonald's office. They told us to do it. The only problem I have with that, a major problem I have with that, is the board, once you're elected, you're supposed to take at least 1 hour By state law, you're supposed to take 1 hour of instruction in school finance, 1 hour of instruction in Open Meetings Act, 1 hour of instruction in ethics, which we all know they're lacking in ethics, they're lacking in financial understanding. All the board members throughout their time on the board has refresher courses on what their time should be, or what their basically is continuing learning, continuing education. It's a way for them to know what they need to know to properly run a school district. But on top of that, let's say they didn't get the training, which maybe they did, maybe they didn't. I could not find in the minutes of where they posted that they had taken training. But let's say they did or they didn't. Whether they did or they didn't, there's also a book that's put out. Just I think it's every 2 years. It's called the Department of Education School Law Book. This walks you through all the law changes, school financial changes, anything to do with school law is on there. It tells you what you need to know and what you need to do to stay out of trouble, basically. The law book is a free download on the Oklahoma State School Board Association. It's also available from the Department of Education. So you got two places that you can get this book from for free, and it tells you everything you need to know. If you go into it and you type into the search bar of the PDF, you type into it school bonds, it tells you what you can and cannot do with school bonds money, how you can expend it, and everything. So instead of going to a place that would have told them that they cannot do this, they asked an attorney, or supposedly, I mean, this is basically Mannix Barnes just saying, well, we asked. I don't know if he did, don't know if he didn't, but it seems kind of silly to me that the man would, or the company would say, the law firm would say 1 minute, this is what you're going to expend it on, and then 6, 8 months later, they're like, well, here's what we'd really recommend you doing with the money. We recommend you break state law, state statute, and go do with it with whatever you feel like doing with it. So this is Oklahoma 70, Statute 75, 110. This just goes over the instruction hours that are required for each board member, whether they're an incumbent or whether they're a new board member, of how many instruction hours they need to go through, what's supposed to be done with the certificate, proving that they've done this. Uh, like I said, I can't find where the board did it, but I can't say they didn't do it. And I talked about this earlier that I don't know why they expended 18.5% of this new bond issuance. I mean, almost a quarter of the bond money that we got or that we approved of the 41.76 went to the past debts that should have had money coming in. That's the part we're not clearly understanding. What happened with the tax money that was collected to pay the payments on these bonds? Because that tax money would have been collected. At least it should have been. My tax bill hadn't went down. Maybe somebody else's did. Now, for the punishment. If you violate 62,574, if you violate 62,574, it is clear What the punishment for that is, if you knowingly and willfully violate it, the law says any member, governing body of a governmental entity or other elected or appointed official charged with the duty of expending the proceeds of any bond issue who knowingly and willfully violates any provision of the act shall forfeit his office. Now, it could be argued they didn't know that they were violating it. Yet, in the proposal that was given to the board and the community, it states at the very top of the page, for section 4 of the proposal, of where it breaks down where all of our money was going, it lists every single item and value. It said 85% of the items listed, or the bond, the foresaid bond, would be spent on the items listed. 85% was not spent on it. You knew the law. That makes you knowingly and willfully, because you chose to spend the money, whether the lawyer told you to do it or not. You willfully voted on it and willfully did it. So therefore, you violated, or in this instance, Robert Everman, Rosalind Craven, Linda Farland, Robert Sharp, and Mannix Barnes violated the act, the statute, the 62-574, they clearly violated. And the punishment for such is to forfeit the office. Now, Mannix Barnes can't forfeit an office. Unfortunately, the other the four, chose to vote him in, or vote for him to be superintendent. The reason we've always wondered why they made Mannix Barnes superintendent. Well, because 2 months prior to this, or during the same time period that Mannix Barnes was becoming superintendent, and just 4 months earlier to the announcement of him being hired as superintendent, they had willfully and wrongfully and knowingly spent bond money that would violate state statute, calling for them to forfeit office. And what if you go out and you get a superintendent that actually has read the Oklahoma Department of Education and school law book and has actually taken school finance, would actually say you violated the law and could ask for these board members to resign and report it to the different agencies that can make them resign. So there's the magical question answered. Why would they go with Mannix Barnes? Simply put, to save their seats. Why is it so important for them to be on the board? Don't know. Where did the millions of dollars that should have been spent from the collection of tax for the bond that was coming up, instead of using bond money from 2018? Don't know where that money's at either. I know they didn't embezzle it. Let me rephrase that. I'm pretty sure they didn't embezzle it. $8 million, kind of hard to hide. I think they did mismanagement of funds, maybe. Maybe there wasn't enough taxes collected to cover the previous bonds for that year. I don't really know. I can't say. But there is 2 legal ways that they can get out of this. One is they finish the project for less than the cost. Considering they had not broken ground on the Steam Center, the Wire Center, or any of these places at the time of the bond issues, it makes it hard to believe that they knew they could finish it for less. Plus, then 2 years later, we'll get hit by a pandemic that just skyrockets the cost of lumber, building supplies. I just recently built something that would have took half the amount 2.5 years ago, cost half the cost that it cost just today. So for them to say they knew that it was going to cost less at that point, I don't buy for 1 second. Now, they could have also received outside funds. Now, most of the time when you receive outside funds, you let the community know you received outside funds. We've not been made aware of funds received that could offset the cost. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. Maybe if they would communicate that to the community, we could agree with them. But as it stands right now, I've not seen any monies from any outside sources that offset the cost of these projects. Once again, I'm just going to tell you, I feel like Mannix Barnes was put in the position that he's in to cover the rest of the board's butt on the misuse of this bond money so they wouldn't have to forfeit their seats. This is where they voted on expending the money from the 2018 lease purchase agreements and bond monies to pay for past 20 or 2009 2013 bonds. So they took our money from 2018 to pay past debt that we were already supposed to be in tax for, and it going towards paying for the debts occurred in the 2009 and 2013 lease finance agreements with the bond money. Now, this is what I was talking about earlier. On top of the Oklahoma State Statute violation, the use of the 2018 B Series to pay the 2009 and 2013 lease purchase could also be against the Oklahoma Constitution Title 10, Section 26A. Two AGs and multiple senators have questioned this. And the question has always come back pretty much the same. It comes down to the word acquiring. And that means that they have come to take ownership, possession, and control. That means that you paid for it. Like, I give you, for instance, right now, you may own your house, but if you haven't completely paid off the mortgage, then you don't have ownership, possession, and control, which allows for you to do anything you want to do with it. Like if you say, I think I'll bulldoze my house. You can't bulldoze that house because that house is collateral for the state. But if you don't have a mortgage and you've fully paid for it, then you can bulldoze your house and there's nothing really anyone can say about it. And that's the major argument is you if you spent the money, you are to retain or you are to receive title, ownership, possession, or control. Possession and control. They did not. They made a simple lease purchase payment that was already scheduled to be paid. That's all they did. Now, here's a little fun fact for you. In 2017, literally about 21 to 28 days after we voted on our bond measure, a new state statute come into place. It was Oklahoma Statute 62896.1. This is also known as the Bond Transparency Act of 2017. They put this out there. This was nice of the senators. They put this out there in order for us, the citizens, the voters of these bonds, to know where our money is being spent, whether it's by a city or not a city, excuse me, whether it's by a school district or another entity that falls underneath this. It allowed for us to know what our money was being spent on. So if they said, hey, we need $17 million to build a school, we could actually physically see our $17 million be constructed and how it was spent, what was added, kind of the cost oversight. You know, they don't have to give us a full breakdown. They don't have to be like, we spent $175 on nails. But you do have to say that, you know, we built an auditorium that's $250,000 and this is what it looked like and this is where it is. Now, this is supposed to be posted. They're supposed to have posted this on the website, the school website, in order for us to see what was going on, see the progression of it, see the debt get paid off, see what buildings and what expenses were being taken care of for our children. But do we get that? Nope. This right here is what we get. We get a fun little website where you go to. Sorry for the messy mouse work, but it takes me a minute to find everything. This is what you get. A website literally with basically the pamphlets on it. An overview of saying we spent $41 million on this, which they didn't. That's not a $41 million building. Not even close to that. Then you go over to the construction and you get over to the construction and you get that pictures. They won't even waste words to inform the taxpayers of this district what they do with their money. They just put up pictures like we can't read. Just a bunch of pictures. Now, I'm going to take you to another school site, a neighboring school district, Putnam City, here in just a second. And I want you to see the contrast between what we parents at Western Heights, we taxpayers of Western Heights, the community of Western Heights get compared to Putnam City. First of all, Putnam City, whoever their web designer is excellent at his job. This is a beautiful website. It's functional, clean. I'm going to pop right over to the bond information. They put up the bond information. They give you a description of why it's here. They give you what's being spent by school, what they've done at every school. Every school. Transportation, it's all there. Technology center, everything. They do a fine job. So then you go to the bond transparency. So this right here, this is very unique. And I want to stop right here for a second. Their superintendent is so confident that they are properly doing and expending their funds in a proper manner that he gives an affidavit to, and I don't know if this is something he does, if this is what's supposed to be happening with all the districts, but he gives an affidavit that what I'm doing is true and factual. What we're putting up here is true and factual. What I'm saying is true and factual. That's a true superintendent there. That's somebody that's trying, and this may be a lady. I don't know. Let me see here. I think it says Fred. Who knows? Frederica's. I don't know. But man or woman, whoever it is, their superintendent at Putnam City does an outstanding job because he puts up an affidavit that says you can hold me to my word. This is what I'm doing with your money. Then let's go right here. Look at this breakdown. Look at this breakdown. He tells you where the money is going, how it's going to be expended. I mean, he gives addresses of where the improvements are taking place, not just hopes and dreams that your money's being spent properly. He actually tells you where your money's being spent. And they give an update. And in that update, they tell you where your past bond money has been spent. So they don't ask for your money again on a project that you've already paid for. They already have it listed. So you can go back and be like, hey, a couple of years ago we did this already. Why we need to do it again? You know, this is law. I mean, they even put on here textbooks, funding materials, all that stuff. Roof maintenance in progress, food service equipment, all that. So he's letting you know where every single dime of your money or their money, Putnam City School money, has been spent in their bond measure. Not Western Heights. We have nothing on our website that tells us where it's been spent. In fact, since we're on the topic of monies being spent without anyone knowing how it was spent, let's talk about how the school district has gotten probably close to $8 million in COVID relief funds, and nobody knows how it was spent. Nobody knows what it was spent for. You have a hard time convincing me that you spent $8 million on the terrible mobile hotspots. But that we don't know where the money was spent. There's no telling. For all we know, Mannix Barnes bought him a new pickup truck. Don't know. Not knocking him if he did. If I was stealing money, I'd probably buy a pickup truck too. Not saying he stole any money. Not saying he stole any money. I know he didn't steal 8.7 million, but or 7.7 million, but I would like to know where that money went. Furthermore, our teachers have been working without a contract for almost a year now. He's done nothing for that. Some teachers have been getting pay increases. He's done nothing with that. We haven't went back to school. I feel like that's money saving tactics he's using. He keeps on using the excuse that it's for the protection of the children and the teachers. Yet every other school district in the state has went back. We haven't. The excuse that we're protecting the teachers and the families in the district is wearing old. Why won't you let us decide? If we want to send our kids back to school, then let us send our kids back to school. If you want to be a dictator, then maybe you should go to another school district. Once again, we've asked for an audit. We went out and we got petition signatures. The petitions got enough signatures. The school district will have to approve for the audit to go, then the audit to be conducted, and more than likely, more funds will be found to have come up missing or misused or misappropriated. But I simply just want what is right for the Western Heights kids. And right now, what is fair and right for the Western Heights kids is for the board to remove theirself and allow for people that are going to do what's best for the district to step in and take their place in a fair election. We have an election coming up April the 6th. I encourage people to get out and vote. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for, but I tell you what, if you want friends of if you want friends of the board in there, vote for the incumbent. If you want change, then vote for new leadership. And that the person that gets the seat ain't gonna be able to change nothing. But if they can just hold that seat long enough for us to get the other two, we will get majority. And then we will get Bob Everman out. And we'll get Mannix Barnes out. And we'll get this district back on track. If we don't, and they keep on misusing funds and misappropriating funds, we're going to wind up a complete failure. And then we're going to have to consolidate. And you don't want, nobody knows who would be willing to consolidate with us. We may wind up with Oklahoma City, Mustang, Putnam City, which Putnam City wouldn't be a bad deal, but Putnam City, Yukon, who knows? It's just some district that can come in and take over and hopefully save our schools. But right now, with the financial situation that this board has put us in, if we continue down this path, within the next decade, we won't have to worry about whether there's a Western Heights school district or not, because there won't be one. We won't have any teachers that'll work. We won't have any staff that are willing to work. We won't have any funds to put people to work. We will be a broke, torn apart district. People can look at the STEAM Center. Mannix Barnes can look at the STEAM Center as a saving grace for the district. It's really not. Because in the ultimate end, we have to have funds to pay for it. And the only way that they're going to be able to get funds to pay the upkeep on all of these nice, fancy new buildings is to have another issuance of bonds. And I tell you right now, I'm not voting for another bond. Not with this board in. And I will do everything in my power to keep anyone else from voting for that bond, because they're going to misuse it. They're going to misappropriate it. They're going to spend it on what they feel like they can spend it on, and they're not going to pay attention to what the law says, as they've clearly shown in this. They knew the law. They knew 574. They chose not to follow 574 because there's been no consequences. There should be consequences. There is a consequence for it. You violate 574, then you get punished with 575, which is removal from your seat. They need to be removed. Everyone have a great day.